Hi, now we're going to extend our previous program by introducing another function. Okay, so just to recap, we already created the heading display function, which is to just display the heading of my calculator with all the stars. Okay, and now we're going to write a function that has no input parameters, but is going to have a return value. Okay, so the first thing is, let's look at the function definition. Previously, there was no return value for the heading display, so we say void. But in this case, we want to have a return value of type int. Okay, why int? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this function or this functionality, which is to ask the user to enter a number and capture it, and I want to return the number that the user has entered. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say the return value is int, and the function name, okay, I'll just go call it user input. Okay, and since there are no input parameters, I will say void. Okay, and then I'm going to cut and paste this inside here. Okay, so whenever I call the user input function, I'm going to print out this. Okay, but of course, only the first time I call it is first number, correct? And subsequently going to be second number and third number or whatever. So just to make it simpler, I just go to call it enter a number. Okay, instead of putting first or second. And now when I do a scanf, I need to capture it into a variable. Okay, so num1 is declared here in the main function, correct? So num1 scope is only within the main, so I cannot use num1 here. So I need to declare another variable for num that I can use within this function. Okay, so now let's see how I can use this and how to capture the input value or the return value from this function back in the main function. Okay, so when I want to call this function as before, I need to call or type out the function name. In this case, it's user input. Okay, so I say user input here. Okay, and since I'm not passing any parameters, I again put an empty bracket here. But this time, I want this function, okay, to return a value. Okay, so what am I doing in this function? I'm prompting the user to enter a number and I'm capturing this number. Okay, and I'm putting it inside the variable called num. To return this to the caller, I need to add in one more line, which is return num. So whichever variable I want to return, I just say return and put the variable name here. So what will happen is, when I call this function, okay, that means in my main program, when I call this function user input, I will jump to this function. I will ask the user to enter a number. I will capture it and put it inside the variable num, and I will return it back to the main function. And since I'm returning it back to the main function, I must have a variable to capture this return parameter that I'm sending back. So in this case, I will use num1 as the variable. Yes, so I'm going to be using num1 as a variable to capture the return value from the user input function. So the very first time I call this user input, the user input function, I will come in here, ask the user to enter a number, and once I capture it, I will return it back. And since I'm capturing it back in the main function using the num1 variable, num1 will first hold on to the user input. And I want to capture two user inputs, so all I need to do is repeat this process one more time. Okay, but the second time I want to capture it into a different variable, num2. So you can see that right now I can call the function again and again multiple times, and each time I will do the same thing. I'll ask the user to enter a number, I'll capture it into a variable, and then I will return it. So it is my responsibility in the main function to ensure that I use different variables to capture it each time I call. Correct? If I use the same variable here, that means I will override. So if I use, for example, num1 here again, then the second input will override the first input. Okay, and the first input will be lost. Okay, so in my case, I want both the numbers. So I will be using both num1 and num2 to capture both the user inputs. Okay, so that is how you create a function with a return parameter. Okay, so let's just save this. and run it, and let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see that the first function heading display will call the heading. Okay, will display all the heading. Okay, and what happens after that is I call the user input function. Okay, and in the user input function, I am prompting the user to enter a number, and when I can enter a number, for example 7, it will be stored in the num variable, but when I return, it will go back to the main function. Okay, and be stored in num1. Okay, and then I do the same thing again. I call user input again, so it jumps to the user input function. I enter another number, but this time around I capture it into the num2. So let me just end the program here because I forgot to delete this here. Alright, and since I already captured it twice, I don't need to use it. Okay, so let me rerun this program again. Okay, so the first time I enter number is 5, second time another number, and then the addition and subtraction result comes out correctly. Okay, so this shows you a good example to get introduced to the idea of a function that is able to now return values. Okay, so I do not pass in anything, but it does something and it returns a value back to me. Okay, and since I say it's integer, I need to say return now. Okay, um, okay, so you can see that right now actually I did not do a function definition. Okay, and it still worked. Okay, but yet it is a good practice to do this because again sometimes it is a different compilers that may interpret it differently. Okay, and some accept it, some don't accept it.